Okay, the next question is, how do you deal with people that are manipulative liars?
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's a really good one. Okay, we're around uh, this interesting saying: everything is not what it appears to be. Everything is not what you think it is. Everything is not actually factual when someone says it's a factual based on some factual basis. Uh, we're all being manipulated through commercials, commercials that we see on our computer screens or TV. We're being manipulated to buy the products. We're being manipulated to do certain things, to act a certain way. It's all part of the conditioning, the social conditioning. We have a tendency of manipulating ourselves at times, which is a good thing, I think. But when you start manipulating other people, then that's a problem, okay? Because if you're trying to do that, you're actually doing something that's really dark. And it's without their knowledge. That's where lies come in, falsehoods come in, all these things that fuel exactly what the darkness is trying to place on you. Manipulation is part of our society. Everyone is being manipulated. I hope I'm doing a manipulation to you in the light and letting you know that God loves you and you are forgiven for whatever you've done in life, and things are not as bad as you think. Okay, I'm going to try to manipulate the truth by standing on the truth, and you may call it manipulation, but what I call it is I'm serving you. I'm serving you something that's good, something that's based on truth. And of course, you can't get any lighter than God Himself. Okay, Bishop Joshua, I could feel the burn where you just have to say something. I could see it. His forehead starts glowing. I could see it. It's like a beaming light. So, without blinding us, can you please tell us what's on your mind?
Yeah, sure can. Most of the time, manipulation has to do with people that are narcissists. They're master manipulators. I've met hundreds of narcissists in the ministry. I've met hundreds of narcissists in just general life itself. And, narcissists are people who manipulate other people to gain something over them, to gain power over them. The devil's the master manipulator. He's the master narcissist. But from a young age, we're taught to be manipulators. Why do you think babies cry and kick and scream to get their way? That's manipulation. And if that's not corrected, it produces in them something that can grow into something that later does become narcissistic. We sing songs that are narcissistic. The Rolling Stones sung the song Under My Thumb. That is the biggest narcissistic song I've ever heard in my life. And there's hundreds of songs just like that, and they're famous and they're popular. You watch TV, you're manipulated by the ads. Take this pill and you lose 50 pounds. Well, that doesn't always work. In the real world, it don't work that way. And a narcissist is dangerous, especially, and I want to turn the coin over, because in deliverance work, their manipulation, spiritual narcissist manipulation isn't random, it's strategic. They manipulate to preserve their false self. They lie to protect their image. Carl Jung talked about persona, the way we present ourselves, the way we want people to see us. And really, that first impression is manipulation, because that's not who we really are. That's not who we are in our day-to-day life. We want to show our best self when it really ain't our best self. Carl Jung talks about ego. He talks about shadow. And when we get down into shadow, that's where we learn to really work through the good, the bad, and the ugly. And a lot of times, the way we see ourselves, the way we see the world even manipulates us. We are self-narcissists. At times, even when it comes to receiving things from God, we look at the problem. We don't see the solution. We're not like Abraham. God told Abraham and Sarah, when I come back next year, you're going to have a baby. Abraham believed God. Sarah laughed. That's why they called Isaac Isaac. His name means laughter. But Abraham believed God, and it was counted unto him for righteousness' sake. But, It's fair to be like the father who brought his child to Jesus, and he said, Lord, you know, the devil's tried to kill my son and thrown him into the fire, tried to drown him. And Jesus said, well, if you can believe, all things are possible to him that believes. Being honest is this. He said, Lord, I believe, help my unbelief. You see, he was looking inward. He said, God, I believe you can do it, but I still have some reservations. But see, a narcissist tries to distort reality to maintain control. And that's what the devil does. And when such a person, and I'm going to shut up in just a second, but when they enter the pastoral sphere, they attempt to pull the exorcist into a world built entirely on illusion. And that's why narcissists are so spiritually corrosive. They operate in the same atmosphere that demons thrive in: deception, self exaltation, and emotional domination. And a lot of times, you know, every person that writes to us or calls in is not possessed. Sometimes it's not even oppression. Sometimes it's not even real. It's just people trying to control a situation, trying to lure us into something that may not be healthy, that may not be right, that may not be correct. And we've got to be sure that we are on our game. We've got to make sure that we're armored up, that we have proper discernment, that we are not drawn into that delusion sometimes, because you have to have discernment. That's why we have the assessment that we have. That's why it's been set in place and established so that we can have true discernment.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. Yeah, we want to know exactly what we're dealing with. Accuracy is extremely important, especially when you're dealing with the spiritual battle that we are constantly battling. Dr. Glenn has been in many battles. He's still fighting one right now, and we thank him for his presence. Give us your words of wisdom, Dr. Glenn.
Yeah, I want to say once again, I love listening to you, Bishop Joshua. I mean, you're comprehensive. You cover it from A to Z, and that's wonderful. So I wouldn't try to repeat the same thing in different words. I like to switch the focus a little bit, and that would be in the ministry. There's a problem with narcissism. Is that often preachers try to portray an image that makes them look more holy than they really are. I can remember when I was a pastor of denominational churches, and I remember at conference time and stuff. But I actually perceived the persona which many clergy put on in order to get a better appointment, or in order to get a better church. And when they're in the church, they don't present themselves. I'm not talking about all ministers or all clergy, but some, is that they portray a holiness which you wouldn't see if they were on the tennis court, or if you wouldn't see them on a canoeing trip. And the problem with that is that that makes them then an actor, which prevents them from really being who they really are. It's a fear of, it's not okay for me to present who I am as a holy person, but I've got to put on this facade because I'm not sure who I am will be acceptable to the congregation. And I don't want to make a big issue of this, but I've seen that play out time and time again. And it ends up that the congregation is deceived, and somewhere along the line, they're going to be disappointed. But it also means the pastor puts himself under pressure to always be an actor, and he can't keep that up forever. And I would come down the line and say, members of a congregation, parishioners, often put on a facade of holiness that doesn't portray, doesn't enable, they have to keep this wall up rather than share who they are in Jesus Christ with all their warts and pimples and the rest of it, rather than putting on a facade that they've already reached the Holy Grail or something. So I would say manipulation is not just reserved for people with psychological problems, but also it's present in the church. And I would hope that lay people in the church, they would be who they are. that God accepts them where they are. He loves them too much to leave them where they are, but He can't move you from where you are to where you need to be if you keep the facade up. And
Right.
I would hope the same for fellow clergy persons, that we don't have to be a facade. I am
Right.
who I am, you are who you are, and I don't try to pretend to be holy. I try to live a holy life. And I've got lots of pimples and lots of splinters, but that's okay. I'm only a human being. Yeah.
I've been around for a very long time. I've known a lot of clergy, and I can tell you that the majority of the clergy that I would converse with were not manipulators, but they were men that stood on truth, and they were men that would share the light of God. But I've known other very well known. Now, there's one guy which I didn't know personally, but we all know who he is. It's Jim Jones. Jim Jones was a manipulator. In fact, when he manipulated his congregation to drink poison, over the 900 bodies that were found, not one Bible was found among the bodies. They were all being manipulated by Jim Jones. He was the one who hypnotized them, it seems. And they all believed everything he said. This charisma he must have had was incredible. But it was all under the darkness. And it's just really, when you think about cases like that, I hear about pastors who have convinced their congregation that God is waiting for them and that he would march his entire congregation into the ocean, okay, until they drown. I mean, every single one. This has happened several times in recent history where pastors have actually taken their congregations to the next level of darkness, if you will. And it's just amazing. It's amazing how the darkness can manipulate us, even as pastors and people of God.